Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Jai Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yashodanandana Braja Jana Ranjana. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Yamuna Tira Vanachari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Mr. Pad Paramahansa Purajagacharya Ashtotar Shishimad Divine Grace Srila A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada Ki Jai. ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahansa Purajagacharya Ashtotar Shishimad Divine Grace Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur Ki Jai. Ananta Koti Vaishnavin Ki Jai. Namacharya Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Jai. Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai. Samaveda Bhaktivinoda Ki Jai. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to the assembled devotees. All glory to Shri Guru and Gauranga. Well, I guess I didn't place this in the right place. Did we finish the divine qualities? We got about halfway through. All right. It's a long purport. All right. I think we finished the sannyasi qualities. We're going to go on to the householder qualities now. Charity. All right. So we'll chant the verse, however. Verse is Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. On the 6th day of July, 2020 in SanDiego, we're reading from Srimad Bhagavad Gita as it is. Translation and commentary by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Prabhupada. And we are still on the beginning of the 16th chapter entitled The Divine and Demoniac Natures, texts 1 to 3. And we'll be in the middle of the purport. But we'll start on page 615. Shri Bhagavana Vacha Abhayam Sattva Sangshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vyavastitihi Dhanam Tamascha Yagyascha Svadhyayastapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyamakrodhas Tyagakshantirapaisunam Dayabhuteshvaloluptvam Mardavang Rira Chapalam Tejakshamatuti Shaucham Adroho Natimanita Pavanti Sambadhang Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. We're going to chant the first two. Abhayam Sattva Samshuddhir Jnana Yoga Vivastitihi Dhanam Tamascha Yagyascha Svadhyaya Stapa Arjavam Ahimsa Satyam Akrodhas Tyagakshantirapaisunam Dayabhuteshvalo Luptvam Mardavang Rira Chapalam. Go ahead, Alex. Tejakshamatuti Shaucham Adroho Natimanita Pavanti Sampadam Daivim Abhijatasya Bharata. Okay, so we read these synonyms. I'll just read the translation and go to the part of the purport we're in. All right. We're on page 616, 616. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, fearlessness, purification of one's existence, cultivation of spiritual knowledge, charity, self-control, performance of sacrifice, study of the Vedas, austerity, simplicity, non-violence, truthfulness, freedom from anger, renunciation, tranquility, aversion to fault-finding, compassion for all living entities, freedom from covetousness, gentleness, modesty, steady determination, vigor, forgiveness, fortitude, cleanliness, and freedom from envy and from the passion for honor. These transcendental qualities, O son of Bharat, belong to godly men endowed with divine nature. And so we have read the qualities of the sannyasi. And we'll begin in the last paragraph on page 618. The next item is charity. Charity is meant for the householders. The householders should earn a livelihood by an honorable means and spend 50% of their income to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. Thus, a householder should give in charity to institutional societies that are engaged in that way. Charity should be given to the right receiver. There are different kinds of charity, as will be explained later on. Charity in the modes of goodness, passion, and ignorance. Charity in the mode of goodness is recommended by the scriptures, but charity in the modes of passion and ignorance is not recommended because it is simply a waste of money. Charity should be given only to propagate Krishna consciousness all over the world. That is charity in the mode of goodness. Then, as far as Dhamma, self-control, is concerned, it is not only meant for other orders of religious society, but is especially meant for the householder. Although he has a wife, a householder should not use his senses for sex life unnecessarily. There are restrictions for the householders even in sex life, which should only be engaged in for the propagation of children. If he does not require children, he should not enjoy sex life with his wife. Modern society enjoys sex life with contraceptive methods or more abominable methods to avoid the responsibility of children. This is not in the transcendental quality, but is demoniac. If anyone, even if he is a householder, wants to make progress in spiritual life, he must control his sex life and should not beget a child without the purpose of serving Krishna. If he is able to beget children who will be in Krishna consciousness, one can produce hundreds of children. But without this capacity, one should not indulge only for sense pleasure. Sacrifice is another item to be performed by the householders, because sacrifices require a large amount of money. Those in other orders of life, namely brahmacharya, vanaprastha, and sannyas, have no money. They live by begging. So performance of different types of sacrifice is meant for the householders. They should perform Agnihotra sacrifices as enjoined in the Vedic literature. But such sacrifices at the present moment are very expensive, and it is not possible for any householder to perform them. The best sacrifice recommended in this age is called Sankirtana. This Sankirtana Yajna, the chanting of Harekrishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare, is the best and most inexpensive sacrifice. Everyone can adopt it and derive benefit. So these three items, namely charity, sense control, and performance of sacrifice, are meant for the householder. Then Svadhyaya, okay, so we'll stop there because that's a natural spot where the householder's qualities end. Om Jnana Timarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshur Unmidatam Mena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. I was born in the darkness of ignorance, but my spiritual master Srila Prabhupada opened my eyes with the torchlight of knowledge. I offer my humble obeisance unto him and all members of Sri Parampara. So we see how here in summary form, after all the Bhagavad Gita is very concise, Krishna is giving qualities and duties for different members of society. Now, this is an important aspect to the whole philosophy of Krishna consciousness, is that it doesn't leave anyone out. It doesn't just talk about, you have to become completely detached from material life, and so give everything up and just join the Hare Krishnas. I mean, we're fortunate to have done that, but most people are going to be in household life. So how can they live in such a way that they're not degraded, but rather uplifted, even in a situation where it's very easy to become attached and into sense gratification? So these qualities are important, and the first one is charity. And you'll find in the 18th chapter that Krishna says that renunciation is very important, that this chapter is called this perfection of renunciation. You'll see in the 18th chapter. But here's what he says: don't renounce. One should never renounce tapasya and dana and yajna. Austerity, charity, and sacrifice. And all of them require to give up something that you might enjoy. You think about it. Tapasya involves undergoing some voluntary austerity that's exactly contrary to the impetus for sense gratification. Charity means you have to spend some money, which you could use on sense gratification. And of course, yajna is a sacrifice. The very thing is a sacrifice. There's some overlap. I mean, charity is also a sacrifice. But these are especially meant for the householders because they have means. But it's important to understand who to give charity to. And this is something that can be very delicate. I remember going to India. When I first go, you go to Radhakund, you go to Govardhan Hill, and sometimes there's a whole line of beggars, people just waiting there. And then you understand, okay, this is Vrindavan, So when you give charity here to support people, they're not ordinary persons. They're Vrijbasis. And so I generally try to give something, whatever I can, Even though, when I first went, I had practically no money myself, but you try to share. So the idea is that charity is a way that society can actually live. When you think about it, unless there is some kind of a sense of supporting each other, if it's just every man for himself, then it becomes hellish. And without that charitable spirit, society is really a society of demons. And we're reading about their qualities, and you see it's all about, what's that mantra? There's a mantra, Krishna imitates the demons. You remember? Ishwaroham, aham bogi, siddhoham, balavan sukhi. It rhymes. I am the master. I am the enjoyer. I am perfect, powerful, and happy. It sounds like a famous person I won't mention. And you read about in the Bhagavatam, there's so many villains, demons, and they're more or less in that mood. Unfortunately, when you have a society that's a consumerist society, it breeds that kind of mentality: selfishness, self-centeredness, how to exploit others. A million cons on the internet trying to sell you something, that you don't need, or you send the money, it doesn't come, So there's the charity, and then there's the cheating, and they're vying in any society. So as devotees, in one sense, sincere devotees, their whole life is dedicated to charity. You're giving your life force, you're giving your energy, you're giving your intelligence, your words, whatever Lakshmi you have, over and above what you need to live, in the service of Krishna. And Prabhupada made it very clear what that charity is meant for. It's meant for pushing on Krishna consciousness. That's the greatest charity, the greatest welfare work. And you can, it's interesting. I don't know if you remember the 12th chapter. In the 12th chapter, Krishna answers Arjuna's question very explicitly. What's better, the impersonalist or the person with this personalist? And he gives the ideal, my ananyena bhavine bhaktin kurvanta yedvita, or something, we meditate on me with one pointed intention, so this is the ideal. But it says, but if you can't do that, then cultivate bhakti yoga, the sadhana bhakti, and you'll get the desire to attain me. You're cultivating pure desire. If you can't do that, then try to work for me as much as possible, and then that'll help. Meaning you'll be giving some of the fruits. And if you can't even do that, then at least be charitable. In other words, don't be selfish and create that demonic mood. And what happens is there's several instances of devotees who, I remember this story that Sadhaputta told me many, many years ago. I used to live with him in different places. And he was a brilliant student in northern New York, upstate New York. And he said he would see a tree, but mathematics is like when you get into the advanced stages, it's almost a kind of a transcendental madness in a way. You don't see everything. He would see a tree, but he would see the physics of the tree. And the whole thing. He would see that way. But then there was a flood, and sometimes there's a river up there and it floods, and everybody had to get out, and then move the sandbags and do things, and these disasters, if they're not really, devastating, they can bring out the best in people. They kind of be working together for each other's welfare, and it happens like that. So it kind of opened him up a little bit. His great intelligence was then diverted a little bit toward inquiring about life and philosophy, And he came across a Bhagavad Gita, I think in a bookstore, Prabhupada's Bhagavad Gita. And he was fascinated by it, and he made a visit down to New York, and after a while he joined there. I remember Bhakta Richard joined. I was there. And I said, well, what engagement did you give him? Oh, he's up there in accounting. We hear he's pretty good with numbers, Good with numbers, like PhD in math, All right, so that was his first engagement. So he illustrated this point, that if you're charitably disposed, especially if there's a society of devotees who are going out on the street begging or selling books, then you might give a little Lakshmi, and boom, right away, you've done some devotional service. And if you get a book, you might be curious, In other words, that leads to it can lead easily to advancement in devotional service. So charity is very important. And really, this whole temple is existing on charity. Is that sincere Indians who are Vaishnavas and Vaishnavis, they help this temple go on. Dhamma, self-control. So it is dana and then dhamma. It is not only meant for the other orders of religion, but it is especially meant for the householder. So, Prabhupada said, when society first started, he didn't really have many married couples in New York. It was mostly guys. There was one girl, Jadharani, who was a very determined artist, And it wasn't so much an issue, but when he went to the West Coast, when he went to San Francisco, all the boys would come in with their girlfriends, So Prabhupada realized, well, if I'm going to, actually make them devotees, I'm going to have to get them married, and so he set up, it became. The four regs were there in New York, of course, but here, within marriage, it's also regulated, and he created this whole thing. So I always thought from the beginning, well, that's a lot more difficult. Better to try to go for broke and be brahmachari, rather than this once a month. And then if your wife becomes pregnant, it's like months and months and months. It's like, what's the point? But still, most people, devotees become householders. I think it's the majority now. In the early days, it was all mostly brahmacharis and brahmacharinis, and then eventually one or two would get married, But as the movement expanded, more and more, married couples throve. There were schools were created for the kids and everything. So, but there's restrictions. So that's the self-control and, abominable methods. You didn't mention the abortion methods elsewhere, And you can see how degraded the society becomes when there's no restriction. When it's just like whatever goes, And you see, it's just, it disturbs the mind. The mind is always disturbed. You can't really have a peaceful mind and inquire into higher subjects like this if you're constantly agitated. The senses are agitated, So it's a very important aspect of devotional service is self-control. And then sacrifice. Whenever sacrifice comes up, you'll see it maybe 10 or 12 times in the Bhagavad Gita. Prabhupada always turns toward the Sankirtana Yajna. Because traditionally these yajnas, you read about them in the Bhagavatam, all the Brahmins you have to employ. I've never witnessed it myself, but there's a set of Brahmins who chant the mantras. There's a whole other set who are referees. If they mispronounce something, wait, you got to go back. I don't know exactly how it works, but maybe if they mispronounce a few words, they're disqualified. They have to get up from the seat, and someone else. I don't know how. But the strictness of it, and the expense. I mean, barrels and barrels and barrels of ghee. You have to have for all the swaha. We have our little sacrifices. And, there's a bunch of swahas. You can imagine like a day's worth of that, and all of the ladles of ghee that have to be burned up. And everything has to be done just precisely. The pronunciation, the timing, the facing, the way that the altar is facing, everything is precise. Otherwise it can create havoc, Whereas the Sankirtana Yajna is hey, you played the tuba? Bring it along, But there's no restriction, Nam namakari bahudandi sarva shaktis. Niyamatak smaranena kala. There's no restriction on time, place, or candidate for chanting. It's the most, ecumenical, sacrifice. And so because it's Krishna directly, he's not concerned with the externals. You're not doing it's not some kind of deal. With the demigods, you got to do it just right. Otherwise they don't think you're sincere. But with Krishna, somehow or other, chant my name, Bhava Grahi Janardana. I'm going to memorize this verse once and for all. Murka Vadati Vishnaya. Something Vadati Vishnave. And then I forget the third line. But they both get the same result because Bhava Grahi Janardana. It's all about pronunciation. It says the fool, the mukha, he says Vishnaya, but Vishnu is an exception. Normally you say Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pesta is vocative form, but when it's Vishnu, it's an exception. So it should be Vishnave. So Krishna doesn't say, oh, this fool, he can't come to me. No, he's looking for the heart. He's looking for. But if they both say it sincerely, then he's looking for the bhava. Bhava grahi. Grahi means he grasps it, just like we say grasp if you understand. He's looking for that bhava, that feeling. Janardana, Janardana, Krishna. So that's what counts with the chanting of the holy name. How much of your attention you bring it to your heart, your sincerity, that's what really counts. And so that's it's available to all. So in this age, what does it say, that famous verse? This is another one you can put on your list. It's in the list. Kalir Doshan Nidhe Rajan. Didn't reach it yet, huh? No? How far down the list have you got? No, this is 12th canto. Oh, you're not actually going down the list anymore? Oh, the Bhagavad Gita you're picking out. Okay. Anyway, this is a verse. It's right where we live. So in the 12th canto, there's several chapters, I think, describing the evils of the age. Prabhupada would often quote, the physical strength will wane, the longevity will get smaller, mercy will be decreased and everything. So at the end of all of this, he says, Kalir Dosha Nidhe Rajan, O king, Shukadeva is speaking. This Kali age is an ocean of faults, But Kalir Dosha Nidhe Asti Eko Mahan Guna, but there's one very special quality. Kirtanadeva Krishnasya Mukta Sangam Param Vajet. Just by chanting Krishna's name, Kirtanad Eva Krishnasya, Mukta Sangha, you become free
from all attachments in this world. And param vrajet, you go to the supreme abode. You know, it's almost like not a consolation prize. It's kind of a counterbalancing, feature of this age. Now, people are so fallen that they don't take it up, but it's simple. And if you just start the process, you make so much advancement, you counteract so many sinful reactions. So there's another verse, not nearly as famous, describing this Kali age. Now, Kali age at the beginning of Bhagavatam is described, Prayen alpayashak sabhya. This is one we should know. Prayena means for the most part, and then he gives a whole list of things. Alpayasha means a short age. Longevity is decreasing, how long you live. For the most part, people don't live very long. Payanam is kalavasmin, in this Kali age, Yugejana. Manda. Manda means lazy. We're lazy in the matter of spiritual life. Very energetic, make money and enjoy, but Sumanda matayo. And if you happen to be interested in spiritual life, chances you'll be misguided. There's so many cheaters even come from India, Manda bhagya. Therefore, because for most part, all these qualities are there. Unfortunate. And upadrata, always disturbed in mind. So, how are you going to practice yoga? How are you going to practice meditative yoga? It's impossible. In fact. So these qualities are mentioned there. And to counteract that, Krishna mercifully has come with Chaitanya Mahaprabhu and give this process, which is really easy to enter into. It requires sincerity and faith. This is the marketplace of the holy name. Nityananda Prabhu has opened it. He's just asking one thing, what's the price? Your faith. If somehow you acquire a little faith in the chanting, then that's the most valuable thing. So Prabhupada says, now one thing I would like to encourage you. Traditionally, because we don't have any big classes here and there's no old timers, when in the purport where Prabhupada gives the mantra and it's Hare Krishna, then usually everyone comes in. Not singing and dancing, but just saying that. So in the future when that happens,
I was wondering about that because I wasn't sure. I heard that Bodhi started doing that, Prabhupada went with it, but I didn't know it was a standard. But
it's not if you don't do it, you're not making a big offense, but it's kind of a standard thing. So it'll remind me of old times. So just indulge me, okay? All right, so now let's go on to Svadhyaya, which is Vedic Study, near the end of page 619. Then Svadhyaya, Vedic Study, is meant for brahmacharya, or student life. The brahmacharis should have no connection with women. They should live a life of celibacy and engage the mind in the study of Vedic literature for cultivation of spiritual knowledge. This is called Svadhyaya. Tapas, or austerity, is especially meant for the retired life. Okay, so that was all for the brahmacharis. Well, we'll go back for that. One should not remain a householder throughout his whole life. You must always remember that there are 4 divisions of life: brahmacharya, grahastha, vanapasta, and sannyasa. So after grahastha, householder life, one should retire. If one lives for 100 years, he should spend 25 years in student life, 25 in a householder life, 25 in retired life, and 25 in the renounced order of life. These are the regulations of the Vedic religious discipline. A man retired from household life must practice austerities of the body, mind, and tongue. That is tapasya. The entire varnashram dharma society is meant for tapasya. Without tapasya or austerity, no human being can get liberation. The theory that there is no need for austerity in life, that one can go on speculating and everything will be nice, is recommended neither in the Vedic literature nor in Bhagavad Gita. Such theories are manufactured by show-bottle spiritualists who are trying to gather more followers. If there are restrictions, rules, and regulations, people will not become attracted. Therefore, those who want followers in the name of religion, just to have a show only, don't restrict the lives of their students, nor their own lives. But that method is not approved by the Vedas. So let's just discuss those for a minute. First is Svadhyaya, Vedic Study. So Prabhupada, worked so hard to produce these books, and he wanted us to study them and know them. And really, it's a tremendous opportunity. I mean, they've been worked on, edited and made and written in a way that's understandable with a little, the language needs to be understood, and some words are difficult. But it's pretty clear English, And so the Vedic study, systematic Vedic study, is especially good for the brahmacharis. You have the time, you're not entangled in so many things, the worries. That's a great advantage, to be living simply. It gives you more peace of mind by which to apply yourself to this study, which strengthens your faith, it strengthens your determination. When you really start to feel that you're knowing some things about the books, which are vast, admittedly. Tapasya, or austerity, is especially meant for the retired life, but it's really there in all divisions of life. And as soon as we read about tapasya, there's one verse we should think of, 551. This is Rishabhadev's famous verse. Nayam deho deha bhajangra loke kashtan kamanadate vidbujange tapo divyam puttakaye nasatvam shuddye jisma brahma saukyam tanantam. He says, my dear sons, he's speaking to his sons, he's about to retire. There are also many others who've gathered. Said, human life is not meant for working very hard for sense gratification, just like the hogs. Rather, tapo divyam, divine penance. Because tapasya, as Krishna says in the second canto, this is a form of gaining strength. You can use that strength for demonic purposes. All these, demons that Krishna kills in Vrindavan, they're all yogis. They're great yogis. It's not like some big snake came. No, a yogi took that form. He thought, well, this would be a good way to kill all, Krishna and all his friends, Agasura, So they have this power of shape changing, we call it, but it's also it's a yogic power. So that took great austerity. Think of Hiranyakashipu, all the demons, they perform austerity to get very, very powerful. So that's not divyam, that's not tapo divyam, that's tapo asuric. So, but there are divine, now in this age, austerities have been made pretty easy. I mean, comparatively speaking, Now, if you go to India, I remember when I went on my first parakram of Govardhan Hill, there's a bit of austerity there, 13 miles around, and it's become more difficult because they paved the area. It's a lot easier walking on the sand, You get on the roads, in feet, it was a problem. Some devotees, they start walking, they go into India, they're going to go on parakram, they start walking on the pavement, toughen to get some calluses, But so there are plenty of austerities, but it's not like you read about in Bhagavatam. It's doable if you put your mind to it. Now, psychologically, if you're not prepared, it's too much. Getting up early is just too much. I can't imagine, because people they're not trained at all. So when it requires that when you read, you learn, you associate, and then you become determined. I want to try to do this, and then you take on these austerities and you realize, it's possible through determination and especially through Krishna's mercy. You get the spiritual strength to do it, and it becomes second nature. So that's the thing about bhakti, that that when you do devotional service, that which wasn't austerity becomes a source of happiness, of joy. Getting up early in the morning, okay, I did that part, and now you're there for Mangal Artik. And if we really understood and meditated on the meaning of this Tulsi Puja, tears would flow. We're praying to become a Manjari, an assistant to Tulsi, who's a gopi. It's Manjari Baba. There it is. So, it's really advanced, Prabhupada's giving us. But it's necessary to purify the heart. That's what the whole verse continues. By this divine austerity, O son, sattvam shuddhyed, your existence will become purified, and then from that purification you'll become capable of experiencing spiritual happiness, which has unlimited depth. You can, and it goes on forever. Tapodivim put together, shuddhya brahma saukyam tvanantam. Two means which by contrast with material happiness doesn't end. We can't even imagine that kind of happiness. For us, happiness means it's flickering happiness of sense gratification. Then you think about it, you reminisce, you look on to the next one. It's self-defeating. So tapasya is very essential for all the the ashrams. Now, Prabhupada's, this, okay, if you live 100 years, well, who lives 100 years now? But, and if you do live 100 years, are those last 25 really going to have any energy if you're a sannyasi at that time? But the idea is that there must be a program of renunciation even in household life. And, that this is one of the difficulties with the program as it's outlined here, is that, okay, suppose you follow the program, you go on retired life, and then when you're 50, and then you go out, and then after some time, you go on pilgrimage with your wife, then you send her back home to be supported by the elder sons. Those elder sons aren't home. There's, in this age, they're off somewhere 1,000,000 miles away doing something. Last thing they want to do is take care of mom for the next 20 years. It's done sometimes, but it's not, you can't be sure of it. Plus, how are you going to live? Oh, you can go from house to house and get a little something. Yeah, in India. But how can you really survive as a sannyasi just doing that? In the modern age, the devotees do it by going from temple to temple, and they do programs in the householders' homes in this way. The whole thing is, some of the sannyasis, when they wanted to take sannyas, I remember Kadambakananda Maharaj, one of your godbrothers, he said, I never had to think about business as much until I wanted to take sannyas, because he had to set up a whole business so that his wife would have some income, his former wife, Anyway, it's not easy to do it this way. But there are regulations. The whole idea is that you lead a regulated life for the benefit of becoming purified in mind, body, and words and everything, so that you can taste spiritual happiness and spiritual knowledge. It's refined. It's a very refined taste. Most people, it's just too gross. The senses, the mind, and everything. So, but if you understand the need and the goal, and you believe in it, you can see, advanced devotees, Prabhupada and others. It's real, and it's worth striving for. Okay, there's a Brahminical quality here of simplicity. The second paragraph from page 620. As far as the Brahminical quality of simplicity is concerned, not only should a particular order of life follow this principle, but every member, be he in a brahmachari ashram, grahastha ashram, vanapasta ashram, or sannyas ashram, one should be very simple and straightforward. Ahimsa means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. One should not think that since the spirit spark is never killed, even after the killing of the body, there is no harm in killing animals for sense gratification. People are now addicted to eating animals, in spite of having an ample supply of grains, fruits, and milk. There's no necessity for animal killing. This injunction is for everyone. When there is no alternative, one may kill an animal, but it should be offered in sacrifice. At any rate, when there is an ample food supply for humanity, persons who are desiring to make advancement in spiritual realization should not commit violence to animals. Real ahimsa means not checking anyone's progressive life. The animals are also making progress in their evolutionary life by transmigrating from one category of animal to life to another. If a particular animal is killed, then his progress is checked. If an animal is staying in a particular body for so many days or so many years and is untimely killed, then he has to come back again in that form of life to complete the remaining days in order to be promoted to another species of life. So their progress should not be checked simply to satisfy one's palate. This is called ahimsa. Now, I think it's in the 13th chapter, where this comes up again about nonviolence, and really it's proactive. In other words, here it means not arresting the progressive life of any living entity. But there he says nonviolence means helping others to progress toward Krishna consciousness. It's just like if you're walking down Grand here and there's an accident on the corner, and somebody's writhing in agony on the curb, they broke their leg or something, You walk by, that's a crime. Criminal negligence. They try to program, but really, devotees, of course, you try to call the ambulance, to help them. So the idea is that everybody's in an emergency situation. When you see through the eyes of Shastra, you think these people are headed toward, they're suffering now, and they're going to suffer tremendously more because they're acting in ignorance or performing some of these sins and everything. So I have to help them. Just like that mood of Prahlad. Prahlad Maharaj, he says, I don't have any problem. Naivod vijay padadodatya vaitaranyas. I'm not disturbed at all because I'm already on the other side of the Vaitarani river with you. Wherever I want, I can chant your glories and immerse my mind in an ocean of ecstasy. And he proved it, that even when his father was trying to kill him, he was completely meditating. He wasn't disturbed, you know. So, but he says, I am lamenting for these poor fools and rascals who are trying to enjoy Maya Sukhaya, flickering happiness, and suffering like anything. So the next verse he says, I'm not going to be like these, what is it? Maya and Devamuniyos, Swavamukti Kama. Swavamukti Kamis. A kami is a person who strongly desires his own liberation, not anyone else's. And to that end, he wanders where there's no people, in some secluded mountain or, you know, some cave somewhere. And there's a tremendous selfishness there. It's like, I don't feel any empathy for all these other souls. So Prahlad says, I'm not like that because I don't see anyone else but you who can help them, and therefore I have to give them you. I have to be a medium to give them you. So that's what he's saying to Nrsingadev. So that's the real mood of a Vaishnava, is that, you know, he takes full advantage of Vaishnava association and enjoys kirtan and Krishna kind is relishing, but at the same time feel the urgency of giving it to others. So those who haven't, learned about Krishna consciousness at all. That was Prabhupada's mood. That was why we're sitting here. That was Lord Chaitanya's mood. He left. You know, he took sannyas, went to Puri, then he left. 2 years, traveled all over South India and preached and chanting and delivering so many people. And he taught Rupa and Sanatan so that they would write books and for the benefit of everyone. You know. So that's coming down. And that's really the quality of the Vaishnava, this phrase, paradukka dukki, to feel others' pain as one's own and to do something about it. Okay. So finally we get the final qualities here. We can finish this up today. Satyam. The word means that one should not distort the truth for some personal interest. In Vedic literature there are some difficult passages, but the meaning or the purpose should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. I'm not going to change this, or it has to be changed. But this purpose, did I tell you about that? How Prabhupada used purpose for purport? But the meaning, comma, or purport, comma, he's just saying it again the same way. If you look it up in the Oxford English Dictionary, you'll find the sixth and last meaning of purpose is also purport. Not in American English. Anyway, this will stay. The meaning or the purpose should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. That is the process for understanding the Vedas. Shruti means that one should hear from the authority. One should not construe some interpretation for his personal interest. There are so many commentaries on the Bhagavad Gita that misinterpret the original text. The real import of the word should be presented, and that should be learned from a bona fide spiritual master. So this is such an essential aspect, is that we're getting the message as it is, Prabhupada's title of the book, and therefore it has potency. It has potency to transform your life. Otherwise, if it's distorted in a slight way for some personal interest, it loses its potency. It may be interesting and someone can cheat you with it, but it's not going to give you the result. So that, knowing the truth and speaking the truth. What is another little T-shirt phrase? Learn it, live it, give it. This is the Acharya principle. Learn it, live it, give it. All three have to be there. Hare Krishna. Krodha means to check anger. Even if there is provocation, one should be tolerant. For once one becomes angry, his whole body becomes polluted. Anger is a product of the mode of passion and lust. So one who is transcendently situated should check himself from anger. Apaishanam means that one should not find fault with others or correct them unnecessarily. Of course, to call a thief is not fault-finding, but to call an honest person a thief is very much offensive for one who is making advancement in spiritual life. Remember in the Bible it says to bear false witness is a sin. Ri means that one should be very modest and must not perform some act which is abominable. Achapalam, determination, means that one should not be agitated or frustrated in some attempt. There may be failure in some attempt, but one should not be sorry for that. You should make progress with patience and determination. The word tejas used here is meant for the Kshatriyas. The Kshatriyas should always be very strong to be able to give protection to the weak. They should not pose themselves as nonviolent. If violence is required, they must exhibit it. But a person who is able to curb down his enemy may, under certain conditions, show forgiveness. He may excuse minor offenses. Shaucha means cleanliness, not only in mind and body, but in one's dealings also. It is especially meant for the mercantile people, who should not deal in the black market. Nati manita, not expecting honor, applies to the Shudras, the worker class, which are considered, according to Vedic injunctions, to be the lowest of the four classes. They should not be puffed up with unnecessary prestige or honor, and should remain in their own status. It is the duty of the Shudras to offer respect to the higher class for the upkeep of the social order. All these 26 qualifications mentioned are transcendental qualities. They should be cultivated according to the different statuses of social and occupational order. The purport is that even though material conditions are miserable, if these qualities are developed by practice by all classes of men, then gradually it is possible to rise to the highest platform of transcendental realization. So you can see how much, how important it is for the leaders of society to have the proper qualities, because otherwise everyone becomes cynical, and they, what is that verse in the 3rd chapter? Whatever a great man does, great means in a great position. They may not actually be great, but they're in a position of power or prestige or influence or whatever. They set the standard for the society as a whole, and we see that today, how crazy it is, to have this fellow at the top who is just setting the worst standard. It's disastrous for society. I mean, all these 130-odd thousand deaths every day, there's another 10,000 or something, could have been avoided. It's disastrous. And it can be, 20, 30, 100 times worse than that. So, whereas on the other hand, when you have leaders like I mentioned, Pariksit or Yudhishthira, or great persons who are, virtuous by nature, people feel protected, and they themselves want to act properly. It's just the way it works. So, therefore, as members of this society, we want to be examples for others also. Prabhupada was very into that. How do you tell a devotee? He famously said, "Oh, he's a perfect gentleman," And it's not always easy, to check your anger. People, become, how do you react when someone attacks you, or worse, if they start blaspheming, I mean, the general principle, in one place it says, if you can't cut out their tongue, then you should leave. Well, you should probably leave. Whatever you do, don't just listen to it, because that's the worst thing. If you can shout them down, that's another thing. At least block your ears. Okay, so we have a few minutes left. We can read. Start the demonic qualities. And this is a short little purport here. Text 4. Dambo darpo bimanascha, krodha parushamevacha, ajnanam chabijatasya, partasam padamasurim. Pride, arrogance, conceit, anger, harshness, and ignorance. These qualities belong to those of demoniac nature, O son of Pita. Purport. In this verse, the royal road to hell is described. The demoniac want to make a show of religion and advancement in spiritual science, although they do not follow the principles. They are always arrogant or proud in possessing some type of education or so much wealth. They desire to be worshipped by others and demand respectability, although they do not command respect. Over trifles they become very angry and speak harshly, not gently. They do not know what should be done and what should not be done. They do everything whimsically, according to their own desire, and they do not recognize any authority. These demoniac qualities are taken on by them from the beginning of their bodies in the wombs of their mothers, and as they grow, they manifest all these auspicious qualities. Sound like someone you know? As uncanny. I mean, check off all the boxes. One note on this word, Dumbo. Now, Prabhupada always says pride, which is fine, is pride. But it's pride in a certain way, and it's described here. They desired, how is it? Want to make a show of religion. They want to make a show of religion and advancement in spiritual science, although they do not follow the principles. This idea of making a show of religion, pretending to be religious, this is the essence of this damba. And you'll see it comes up again and again. We've already had it, I think, in one chapter, but it comes up several times in this description of the demons. It's, hypocrisy, but it's hypocrisy of a certain kind. It's wanting to be thought of as religious, even though one really isn't religious. Now you find, just as a final note here, you remember when the, in the 10th canto, near the beginning, when Kamsa is driving that chariot, and Devaki is there, newlywed, everything. And then the omen says, the 8th child of this woman will kill you. So immediately he loses it. He's a demon, becomes angry right away, furious. He's ready to kill his own cousin, sister cousin. And so Vasudeva has to, think quick on his feet. What can he say to try to allay him? So it finally works, of course, he promises. But I mean, he really got his attention when he said, "This isn't going to look very good for you." In other words, this is your sister on the day of her marriage, and you're going to cut off her head. I mean, so he appealed to his own sense of his status in society. In other words, he's a demon, but he wants to be thought of as a good person. So this is the Dhamma quality. And finally, he promised to give his whatever sons there. You do what you want. And you notice that he did do that. And the first 6 were killed. The 7th was Balaram. He was transferred, and the 8th he broke his promise. He couldn't give that 8th one. So, but the pastime. But that Dhamma quality is very prominent, where the demons, they don't want to be thought of as demons. I'll tell this one little anecdote. You may have heard this before, you've been around a while. But I remember as a kid, there used to be this magazine called Life magazine. I don't know if anyone is old enough for that. It was a big size magazine, it was full of pictures. It was a news magazine, but it was so they did one story on the New York Mafia one week. It was like a weekly. And they had all these, it wasn't mug shots, but it was little photos, all arrayed on the page, maybe 20 of them, And and none of them looked happy, I mean, Prabhupada would say the face is the index of the mind, They all look like they're bearing, what we would now know, they're bearing a whole bunch of karma, for killing this guy and, whatever they do. And I just remember that, this is the nature of demonic life, is that you're always agitated, afraid. Hiranyakashipu, he was running the universe, but he couldn't control his little son, so he was miserable, And eventually, he couldn't stand it anymore, and he challenged Shringadev and got killed. So that's what happens when you yield to the lower nature, is that you're never at peace. You can never be peaceful. And so you may have $1 billion or more. $1 billion is nothing today for these guys. $150 billion, But you see that they're worried. They're not happy. The only ones who can really be happy. Even in the midst of a situation like this, how can you keep your even keel? The pandemic and everything is to be intensely Krishna conscious. That helps you to tolerate and to get through it. So, okay, so we'll adjourn there and we'll begin tomorrow. Pick up on text 5. All glories to Srila Prabhupada. Hari Hari Bol. Thank you for your attention.